There's a few brand new gaming news stories we need to discuss today, starting with Tony Hawk coming back to the gaming space in probably the worst way possible. Then we also have to cover an interesting acquisition from Nintendo themselves. Then the big talking point for today's video is a Sony published title that will be going free to play, at least in a trial format, for Nintendo Switch Online members that was just announced today. What's up, Nation? If it's your first time on the channel, make sure you join Sunbro Nation by subscribing below, hit the like button on this video if you enjoy it today, and make sure you turn on your bell notification icon so you're kept up to date with all the newest gaming news. And as I mentioned, guys, we got a few different stories to get through today, and we have to kick it off with a conversation around Tony Hawk, as this is a franchise that I have a ton of nostalgia for. And while I wish I was here to tell you today that we're getting something like Tony Hawk 3+4 remaster, or just a brand new from the ground up developed game in the franchise, we are talking about Tony Hawk today being in the news because he has announced a partnership with Sandbox, and they will be striving to build the biggest skate park in the metaverse, driven with blockchain NFT style technology. Yes, this is the unfortunate reality whenever Activision Blizzard decides to completely dissolve Vicarious Visions. As you may remember, recently on the channel we discussed scrapped plans for a Tony Hawk 3+4 remaster that would have been in the same formula and format of what we saw Tony Hawk 1+2 remaster launch in, which by all accounts was a fantastic staple title and one that I had a ton of fun playing through, and really having that nostalgia trip hit hard. It definitely played exactly how you want Tony Hawk games to play, and I wanted that formula to remain through all the way through the series classics. You know, remake 3+4, which was on the table. Then once that's done, remake Underground 1+2, and then you can transition into brand new from the ground up titles. But that is not what we're talking about today, as for the foreseeable future there's no traditional Tony Hawk games in the works, but you can see the following posted up over on Eurogamer, where they have to say, Tony Hawk announces the biggest skate park in the metaverse, Downhill Jam. Regrettably, Tony Hawk has announced a partnership with blockchain/metaverse/virtual world game The Sandbox. This will add skating-based arenas and pixely versions of Tony Hawk you can buy as NFTs. Confused? Here's a visualization of how it'll look. What's The Sandbox? The Sandbox is a community-driven platform where creators can monetize voxel assets and gaming experiences on the blockchain, according to its website. That means events in its Minecraft-esque world, like its forthcoming Web3 land sale, where users can buy land on its map along with NFTs of voxel assets, as much as a money grab as it is a land grab. So as I mentioned, as somebody who grew up with vast nostalgia for the Tony Hawk franchise, this was not the announcement that I was looking forward to when I see things in the headlines like new Tony Hawk game unveiled. Sandbox, I don't know entirely the ins and outs of it, but you can see the different pixelated art style. Like, maybe it's going to be a fun, free to check out game, but I wouldn't spend a dime on it. Might be the older man talking to me, or just remembering the classical era of gaming, but things that with announcements like blockchain NFT technology to fuel game sales. And then also you see things like today, Skate was announced that that's going to be brought back, but not only brought back, we knew that it was in development, but it will be a free to play project from EA. So get ready for all of the microtransactions and things along with that. I would rather have a full, complete, finished project. If I got to pay $50-$60 at one time and then I get to experience that game and optionally purchase DLC down the road, that's one thing, but definitely not a fan of the cash grab gotcha style play mechanics that we are seeing become more and more prevalent. And what will be interesting to see is the future generation that's growing up with all these things right now might not have any of the reservations that some of us more old school gamers have, where free to play initially just seems like the most sense, and before you know it, you've spent $150 in a game trying to get all of the custom skins and have unique items that really are just cash grabs at the end of the day and doesn't really add to your overall game experience. So this Tony Hawk plus Sandbox experience will be a hard pass for me, but regardless, Tony Hawk is back in some format with new games. But I am hopeful that when Microsoft takes over Activision Blizzard, that maybe we see Phil Spencer kind of put more of the resources, as he mentioned he would do, to reviving classic IPs, specifically name dropping Tony Hawk franchise and Guitar Hero, which I'm very much ready to come back as well. And hopefully a few years down the road, we can be having a different conversation with the direction of skateboarding games and Tony Hawk games in general. So I want to hear from you guys in the comments down below, your personal thoughts and feelings about gaming and NFT cash grab style games becoming so prevalent, and this Tony Hawk announcement. So please share all your thoughts and feelings on what you want to see from the future of Tony Hawk games in the comments down below. Now, the next story we're talking about today is an interesting one because it has to do with Nintendo fully acquiring a company, which you will know if you follow Nintendo news is not a common occurrence, as Nintendo's not like the Microsoft giants of the world and the Sony giants of the world, where they try to go take over other companies that are already established and integrate them into their own brand, but rather Nintendo often focuses on internal growth themselves, as we recently had their headquarters getting an announcement for like a huge expansion, literally almost doubling the size if I'm not mistaken, and they've gone on record multiple times stating that they would rather organically grow their existing base that has their real true Nintendo DNA, as opposed to going out and finding third-party companies and bringing them into their umbrella. But that is not the case today, as you can see the following article posted up over on Go Nintendo, where it says Nintendo acquires CG animation studio Dynamo Pictures, will rename as Nintendo Pictures. Nintendo has announced their acquisition of the Japanese CG animation studio Dynamo Pictures. The acquisition, which will give Nintendo a 100% stake in the company, will go through on October 3rd, 2022, where Nintendo will rename the studio to Nintendo Pictures. Nintendo says they'll be using Dynamo Pictures to focus on development of visual content utilizing Nintendo IP. Dynamo Pictures has already worked with Nintendo on various projects, as they're responsible for the animation of the Pikmin short movies, as well as some post-production for Metroid Other M. Outside the realm of Nintendo though, Dynamo Pictures has done motion capture for Monster Hunter World, Persona 5, Death Stranding, and Nier Replicant, amongst many others. For a full list of the credited works, you can check out the studio's website here. Now, this will be an interesting acquisition to watch and see unfold, and see how Nintendo ultimately utilizes this company, because obviously Dynamo Pictures being so into the heavy CG side of things, is this more of an acquisition that positions Nintendo in a better way for future movie projects? As we know, they've been on record basically stating they want to diversify how they're driving their revenue into their business as a whole, and that's why we see things like the Universal partnership, where we have Nintendo theme parks that are now soon to be in multiple places of the world, as the first one in Hollywood will be opening up in early 2023. You already have the Staple Park in Japan, of course, and Nintendo also has this first major attempt at a CG Mario movie that will be launching in April 2023, and they've stated numerous times that they want their characters to evolve into household names for the entire family, whether that be brand new kids growing up or adults that have the nostalgia that grew up playing on the NES and forward. They want names like Mario, Donkey Kong, Link, and Zelda, amongst many others, to be all in the mainstream and recognizable, whether that be from the Lego partnerships that they're working on, or the Universal Studio partnerships, or the movie partnerships. It's definitely going to be an interesting move to see Nintendo expand more into that CG universe, as they've committed to doing. This may not be directly towards that. This could be something more of a studio that they will bring in for certain game projects to work on cutscene animations for games, but I definitely think that them acquiring a studio 100% of the shares and bringing it in-house, it definitely does align with their previous statements of diversifying revenue streams. So I would expect this to be more of a movie driven decision. However, it could definitely tie into games as well. I want to hear from you guys in the comments down below. If you think Nintendo will continue to acquire different companies, what do you think the decision behind this particular acquisition really indicates? Do you think it's more movie based for the future of how they're going to diversify their revenue, or do you think it is something that is more just in line with their traditional game development? So please share all your thoughts and theories on Nintendo and future game acquisitions, as well as this one, in the comments down below. Now, the last story we're talking about today is a very strange one, especially if you grew up in the hardcore console wars era of gaming, where companies like Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft, even Sega back in the day would never dream of collaborating with each other, much less putting their first-party developed titles out on multiple platforms, or a Sony title being on a Nintendo console. Like, that's unheard of. You don't see things like that. And the headline today reads that MLB The Show is the newest Nintendo Switch Online free game trial that will actually be on sale for half price as well. And while I'm not the biggest baseball simulator type fan and have not kept up with the MLB games over the course of the years, I know that MLB The Show has a huge following, and it was a big decision when this game went multi-platform, as I feel like a lot of the pressure, if I'm remembering correctly, was from MLB directly, as they wanted it on multiple platforms. But this is a Sony developed title and a first party Sony title, which is just kind of crazy to see a Sony logo pop up on a Nintendo Switch, and now you get the option to play it for free for a full week. As you can see the following posted up over on Nintendo Everything, where it says MLB The Show 2022 is the next Nintendo Switch Online game trial in North America. Starting on July 15th at 10 a.m. Pacific time and 1 p.m. Eastern time, the game can be played entirely free with an active subscription. Those that want to buy the full release later on will be able to carry over their save data. Additionally, by participating, you'll earn 100 platinum points on My Nintendo. Just like previous game trials, a sale is planned as well. MLB The Show will be sold for 50% off until July 22nd. Now, this game is a 17 gigabyte download, so you may have to be cognizant of how much free storage you have available, but I'm really loving these free game trials. I can't tell you how much of a fan I am of it, and seeing Nintendo really dabble into more of free demos to check out games before you purchase, and now just a straight up full game trial that is literally the entire game. If you can get through this game in a week's time, you don't have to even worry about picking it up if you don't want to add it to your library long term, because you can literally play through the whole thing. And I think that's a huge perk for Nintendo Switch Online subscribers, where we look for things like additional value to be added to the service. This is not even locked behind the expansion pack. This is part of the $20 annual plan for Nintendo Switch Online base tier, and I think it definitely does a lot to keep Nintendo more competitive with the other guys, as you see companies like Microsoft and Sony throwing out 3 new games per month added into things like PlayStation Plus library of games, and then of course Xbox is doing their entire own thing with Game Pass, and you still have games with Gold, which is definitely becoming like less of their focus. As you can see, the quality of those titles have definitely dwindled over time, but regardless, this is a nice step, and we're seeing a revolving door of multiple games that in my opinion are quality titles, and the fact that they put them out and market them alongside of a huge steep discount on the games is definitely a big win, as if you do try out this game and decide you are a fan, you get it for $30 as opposed to the $60 retail, and I just think that that's a big value add to NSO, as clearly we've gotten less and less consistent with NES and SNES library of game updates, and I definitely hope that the Game Boy and Game Boy Color systems, when they come over, maybe come into that base tier plan as opposed to being locked behind the expansion pack, and then something like Game Boy Advance is behind the expansion pack. But at the end of the day, more content, free games, and discounted games that you can follow up your purchase with and transfer over your save data to the full game if you choose to purchase it. Like, this is all a good news scenario for Nintendo fans at the end of the day. I want to hear from you guys at this point in the video, all the different stories we talked about today. How do you feel about Tony Hawk and this metaverse partnership, and what do you expect from that game? How do you think Nintendo will be utilizing this brand new company that they just acquired? And then definitely share with me your thoughts on Nintendo Switch Online, the overall value that we are seeing today as subscribers, and are you a fan of these free game trials, or do you feel like this still isn't quite enough compared to what the other guys offer with full games being added into the library? However, keep in mind we're talking about $20 a year versus like $60 a year, but I definitely think it's a good step in that direction. But I want to hear from you guys personally around whether or not you'll be checking out this particular game trial, and if you are a fan of this program overall, and share with me your biggest hopes for the future of Nintendo Switch Online going forward. So regardless of your thoughts and feelings on everything we talked about today, I do look forward to hearing from you all in the comments down below before you leave the video, as I do look forward to getting a back and forth conversation started with you all around these topics. Go watch yesterday's video next if you haven't already, where we discuss Sega officially confirming that the Genesis Mini 2 will be sold in North America, and a breakdown of the new Bayonetta trailer and what that means for the rest of the 2022 Nintendo Switch games lineup. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, turn on your notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.